Welcome Matters With. I'm your host, PhillipBrian. Today we're here to discuss Trek Matters with you. Star Trek Sarek was published in 1994 by A.C. Crispin, and it reached number 13 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Impressive.
I've been on a bit of a Star Trek novel renaissance. This novel, Sarek, as the title implies, the lead character in it is Spock's father, Sarek. The novel picks up immediately after the events of the Undiscovered Country.
To be or not to be.
Target that explosion and fire.
Fire!
Sarek suspects a plot that's going to divide the Federation in half. Also, at the same time, Peter Kirk, Jim Kirk's nephew, becomes suspicious of this same plot as well. That starts two threads. One where Sarek reaches out to his son, Captain Spock, and Peter Kirk reaches out to his uncle, Captain Kirk.
Kirk and Spock drank here. Kirk and Spock.
That begins our story. Meanwhile, Amanda Grayson, Spock's mother, is dying. Let's talk about that. We saw an iteration of Amanda Grayson's passing in the Kelvin timeline, but this story, again, takes place in the Prime timeline, and Spock and Sarek dealing with the passing of Amanda Grayson, Spock losing his mother, Sarek losing his wife, puts these characters at a level of vulnerability we don't usually get to see. And dare I say, we might witness both these legendary Vulcans be emotionally compromised.
You asked me once why I married your mother. I married her because I loved her.
What I really like about this, beyond the conspiracy concept that's going on, that's going to divide the Federation in two, and no spoilers there, but it's good and it involves some of the foes that you expect it to involve, is we get to see Spock, the character of Spock is the most documented character throughout of all of Star Trek, throughout his career. We get to see him through the eyes of his father, which is fascinating.
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 On top of that, there's the subplot involving Peter Kirk. So we get to experience some of the story through Peter Kirk's eyes, who then we get to see Spock and Sarek and Jim Kirk through Peter Kirk's eyes. It's performed by Nick Sullivan, who does a fantastic job. And I highly recommend this book. There are some flaws to it. Toward the end, it gets a bit much.
And a lot of foolish human emotions, right, Mr. Spock? Quite true, Doctor.
And there's some oddness in it. It's set in 2293, and there's multiple references to Jim Kirk's son dying 3 years earlier. Well, the problem with that is 2293 minus 3 is 2290. Well, David Marcus, Jim Kirk's son, did not die in 2290. He died in 2285, which was 8 years earlier. So I don't know why continuity editors didn't catch this, because it's not okay for an expanded universe novel to negate something that happens in canon, although we do understand that sometimes primary canon, which is what we see on screen, will negate what happens in an expanded universe novel. The inverse is never acceptable unless we're presenting this as a parallel timeline, which they do not present this as a parallel timeline. This is supposed to be prime timeline. So that math is a little bit wonky, and it doesn't impact the story, but since it's mentioned multiple times, it does. You're like, well, they should have caught that. The continuity editors should have caught that. The author maybe, but certainly any sort of continuity editors should have caught that.
Time for an emotional outburst.
The official description says this: After Amanda Grayson's death, Sarek embarks on a mission to prevent war with a mysterious alien race while struggling with his strained relationship with Spock. The novel delves into Sarek's diplomatic brilliance and personal vulnerabilities. And that's all completely accurate. The dynamic between Sarek and Spock is interesting. We've watched it play out before. They have a complex relationship. There's so much to like. I can see why this novel sold so well in the mid-90s. And Sarek has always been a fascinating character that we were first introduced, I think, in Journey to Babel was the first time we saw Sarek. Gosh, I hope I'm not wrong about that. But I don't have a continuity editor running in my brain. Some would say that I do, but it's not a secondary source. It's only this primary source. And yes, it was Journey to Babel, because I'm doing some mental math replay right now. And absolutely, the first time we met Sarek was Journey to Babel. I've always found him as a dynamic character. We followed him all the way through as a supporting character throughout the original series, then in a featured supporting character in the original series, then in the films, and even also in Next Generation. Fascinating character. I've used the word fascinating a lot because we're talking about Vulcans here. That's right.
Logical decision, logically arrived at.
I recommend this novel. I'm going to give it a B+. Now, I wanted to give this an A. I was super excited, and the first half certainly gets an A. I love the stuff with Peter Kirk, how much he looks up to his uncle. We all know, maybe not all of us, but his dad, Sam, had a tragic end, and all he has left is his Uncle Jim. We know that Jim Kirk's son had a tragic end, and all he has left is his nephew, Peter.
Sarek. David?
Admiral, David is dead.
If you like Star Trek novels, you should have already read this. And if you're not, read it, man. Listen to it. I'm telling you, it's good.
Hi, Captain.
I want more recommendations. Go to a Star Trek novel you really like. I have a few on deck. We'll talk soon.
As I recall, I opposed your enlistment in Starfleet. It is possible that judgment was incorrect. Your associates are people of good character.
They are my friends.
Yes, of course. Do you have a message for your mother?
Yes. Tell her I feel fine. Live long and prosper, Father.
Live long and prosper, my son.